Have you ever felt a knock on your door late at night, and when you look outside, see nothing but darkness staring back? Now imagine that the ones knocking aren't adults or familiar faces, but children whose eyes are completely black like empty voids swallowing the light. They beg to come inside, but no one who ever lets them in is ever the same again. This isn't just an old ghost story or a nightmare. It's something that people have whispered about for decades, something that could happen to you, or maybe has already happened and you just didn't notice. It was this exact feeling of creeping dread that settled over me the night I moved into my new home. A feeling that began with simple knocks at the door and grew into something far darker. Have you ever felt the kind of unease that settles deep in your bones without knowing exactly why? That strange chill, not from cold air, but from something lurking just beyond sight, something unexplainable, yet unmistakably there. Imagine one night when you're alone in your house. A soft but urgent knocking comes at your door. You peek through the peephole and see nothing. No shadow, no silhouette, just empty darkness staring back. Yet something about that moment refuses to let go of your mind. It was exactly like that when I moved into my new home, a small aging house tucked into a quiet suburb where the streets seemed to stretch on forever, bordered by trees that sway with a whispering breeze. Everything seemed perfectly normal, too normal, perhaps. The kind of place where neighbors smile and nod politely, but don't pry, where the hum of everyday life creates a comforting rhythm. This house, with its creaky floors and peeling wallpaper, was supposed to be a fresh start for me. I remember the first evening clearly. The sun had dipped just below the horizon, leaving the sky painted with hues of purple and fading orange. The kind of dusk that blurs the line between day and night, the perfect time for your imagination to fill in the blanks. As I unpacked boxes in the living room, the silence felt complete, almost too complete, like the house was holding its breath. On the second night, it began. The knock came exactly at 3 a.m. 3 soft, deliberate taps on the front door. My heart jumped, but I told myself it was probably a late neighbor or someone mistaken. I peeked through the peephole, expecting to see a figure, but the porch was empty, bathed in the weak glow of the streetlight. No footsteps, no rustling leaves, just silence. I chalked it up to nerves, maybe, the old house settling. But the knocking didn't stop. Night after night, right at 3 a.m., the same 3 taps echoed through the house as if someone was trying to get in. I began to dread the hour, my sleep becoming restless and fragmented. My mind played tricks, questioning if I was imagining it, until I noticed something else. Outside my window, shadows moved, but never quite like people. Just vague dark shapes slipping in and out of view. One night I swore I saw two children standing by the edge of the yard. Their figures were small and still, but the moonlight caught their eyes, or what should have been eyes, and instead they were completely black. Not just dark, but unnervingly void, like deep wells swallowing light. I rubbed my eyes, hoping the vision would vanish, but it stayed. They didn't speak or move closer. They just stood there watching. The feeling was indescribable. A mix of curiosity, fear, and something primal that warned me not to open the door. I told myself it must be a trick of the light or some stray animals. But the unease grew stronger. Every time those knocks came, the black-eyed children appeared, always waiting, always silent. I tried to explain it away to friends, but they laughed it off. Just kids messing around, they said. Probably some prank. But the way those eyes stared, there was nothing childish about it. No warmth, no innocence. Just a cold emptiness that chilled me to the core. My nights became haunted, not by shadows or sounds, but by the question, who were they? What did they want? And why did no one who ever let them inside come out? The same, the house felt less like a home and more like a trap holding secrets behind its peeling paint and cracked windows. I started digging through old records, looking for anything about the previous tenants, local legends, anything that could explain those visits. What I found was unsettling. Stories whispered in town about children who appeared at doors asking to be let in, eyes as dark as night itself. People who gave in to their pleading were never quite themselves afterward, changed, distant, sometimes missing. Despite every instinct screaming at me to leave, I was drawn in. Like the knock at the door, a mysterious pull. I couldn't resist, because deep down, I knew this was no ordinary haunting. It was something else, something that fed on fear, on hesitation, on the thin line between trust and terror. And that's where my story begins. That first night, I tried to convince myself that those knocks were just a figment of my imagination. The kind of thing you hear when the house settles or when your mind plays tricks in the dark. But as the days passed, it became impossible to ignore. Every night at exactly 3 a.m., the tapping returned, soft, persistent, deliberate. No matter where I was in the house, I could hear it like a haunting rhythm echoing through the walls. At first, I dared not look through the peephole. The thought of Watto, who might be waiting on the other side, was too unsettling. But curiosity gnawed at me. One restless night, I crept to the door and pressed my eye against the small glass lens. Nothing. Empty darkness, thick and impenetrable. I blinked, trying to make sense of what I saw. But as I pulled back, a shadow flickered across the corner of my vision. Turning slowly, I saw two small figures standing just beyond the porch light. Children maybe 10 or 11 years old, their faces pale, almost ghost-like. but it was their eyes that stopped my breath. They were completely black, like deep, endless pits that swallowed any trace of light. No whites, no irises, just black. They didn't speak. They didn't move closer. They just stood there, silently watching. I swallowed hard and shut the door. My heart hammered in my chest, and for the first time since moving in the house, felt cold, foreign, like I was not alone. Over the next few nights, the pattern repeated. The children appeared only at 3 a.m., always in the same spot, always staring with those terrifying black eyes. Sometimes one would knock on the window instead of the door, tapping lightly as if asking to be let in. But the fear rooted me in place, and I refused. Still, the dread grew heavier. My dreams became haunted by the children's silent faces, and waking hours were punctuated by an overwhelming feeling of being watched. Shadows shifted in corners of the rooms where no light could reach. Objects moved slightly when I wasn't looking. An open book turned to a strange page. A chair shifted just an inch from where I left it. I found myself avoiding the front door entirely after dark. I stopped answering calls and messages. The house, which had once seemed a sanctuary, was now a prison holding me captive with invisible chains. One afternoon, desperate for answers, I searched through the old mailbox and found a bundle of yellowed papers and abandoned diary left by a previous tenant. The entries were normal at first, day-to-day thoughts about moving in, settling down. But as I flipped to the last page, my blood ran cold. Written in shaky, uneven letters was my own name. The diary spoke of the black-eyed children, their visits, their pleas to be let in, and the terrible fate of those who opened the door. The writer warned, "They do not ask for help. They demand entry. And once inside, they take something no one ever sees leave." I stared at the words, my mind racing. Was I reading a warning or a curse? Had the previous tenant disappeared, or worse? The house groaned around me, and the shadows seemed to close in. The knocking was coming again. I could hear it faintly, like a sinister heartbeat, calling me to the door. I wanted to run, to escape this nightmare, but something kept me rooted here. A dark curiosity, an invisible thread pulling me closer to the truth. The black-eyed children at my door were no longer just a strange story. They were real, and they were waiting. Night after night, the knocking grew louder in my ears. Even when there was silence, it wasn't just a sound anymore. It became a presence, a weight pressing against the walls and seeping into my skin. I began noticing other strange things around the house. Faint whispers in the hallway when no one was there. Flickering lights that refused to stay on. Cold spots that followed me from room to room. One night, as the clock struck 3, I heard the tap 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 again at the door, but this time something felt different. My breath caught as I cautiously approached, my hand trembling on the doorknob. I told myself not to open it, but an irresistible pull made me glance through the peephole once more. The two children stood there, but closer now, their black eyes shimmering with an unnatural sheen. The little girl's lips parted slightly as if she wanted to speak, but only silence came. The boy's expression was unreadable, empty, yet somehow filled with an overwhelming sorrow. The doorbell rang suddenly, shattering the silence. My heart pounded as I stepped back, bewildered. No one ever rings the bell at this hour. Curiosity turned to fear as I realized the house had rules, unspoken eerie rules that I was beginning to uncover. The children only came at 3, never spoke aloud, and never asked to be let in directly. Instead, their presence was an invitation or a test. I began to keep a journal, noting every detail of their visits. Sometimes they appeared in the corners of my vision, vanishing when I turned to look. Other times, faint scratches appeared on the door frame as if invisible nails tried to claw their way inside. The locals called them the black-eyed children. Urban legends spoke of their sinister origins. Some said they were lost souls. Others claimed they were entities from another realm, feeding on the fear of those who encountered them. One entry in the diary I found mentioned a chilling rule: never acknowledge them with direct eye contact. To do so, it said, was to invite them in. The next night, against my better judgment, I forced myself to meet their gaze through the peephole. As our eyes locked, a cold wave surged through me. The children smiled, slow, unnatural curl of their lips, and the knocking stopped. But the silence that followed was far worse. I woke up hours later to find my front door wide open. Inside, nothing seemed disturbed except for a single black feather lying on the welcome mat. I picked it up, my fingers trembling, realizing that whatever had been waiting outside had stepped inside for a moment, just long enough to leave a mark. From that night on, I could feel eyes watching me, even when the children weren't there. My dreams were filled with whispered voices and shadowy figures lurking just out of reach. Friends began noticing changes in me. How I flinched at sudden noises, how I avoided the front of the house, and how my eyes seemed haunted. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to leave. It was as if the house and the black-eyed children had woven themselves into my life, twisting reality and pulling me deeper into their dark world. The question that haunted me most was simple, yet terrifying. What would happen if I finally opened the door? The night I finally made up my mind to face them, the air was thick with an unshakable tension. The clock in the hallway crept toward 3 a.m., each tick louder than the last, echoing in the heavy silence. I sat by the door, heart-pounding, hands clammy, As the familiar tapping began, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. When I looked through the peephole, the 2 children stood there closer than ever before. Their faces were pale, almost translucent, but their eyes, their terrifying all-black eyes, locked onto mine with an intensity that froze me in place. The girl's lips parted slightly, and though no sound came, the plea in her eyes was unmistakable. Something deep inside warned me not to open that door. But the curiosity, the need to end the torment, overwhelmed my fear. Slowly trembling, I reached for the doorknob and turned it. The moment the door creaked open, a chilling silence fell. The children stepped inside, no words, no movement, just stillness, as if time itself had frozen. I swallowed hard, unable to look away from those endless black eyes. Then the air shifted. A cold breeze swept through the room, carrying whispers I couldn't understand. My vision blurred, and a strange heaviness pressed down on my chest. It felt as if something was reaching inside me, touching memories I never wanted to face. Suddenly, the children vanished. The door slammed shut behind them. For a long moment, I stood frozen, the silence deafening. Then I noticed it. The house felt different, darker, somehow empty. In the days that followed, I noticed subtle changes in myself. I was distant, disconnected from the world around me. My reflection in the mirror seemed off, 2 dark shadows lingering where none should be. Friends remarked on how cold I had become, how my smile no longer reached my eyes. And sometimes late at night, I could still hear the faint knocking, not at the door, but inside my mind, soft, insistent, reminding me that the black-eyed children never truly leave. Their visit wasn't a simple haunting, it was a transformation, and now I'm left wondering not if they will come back, but when.